The hotel lobby was full of light, marble floors gleaming, chandeliers glowing, and right there, in front of dozens of guests, a manager leaned forward with a smirk and said, "Ma'am, this lobby is for registered guests only. You'll need to leave." But here's the truth they didn't know. The woman standing in front of them, Eleanor Whitfield, wasn't some stranger trying to sneak into a luxury hotel. She was the CEO whose signature sat on the very contracts that kept that building standing. In less than 13 minutes, she would turn humiliation into the most unforgettable reversal the staff and the entire chain had ever seen. This wasn't just about a room. It wasn't about a reservation. It was about dignity, about who gets told they belong and who gets told they don't. And by the time the night was over, the people who tried to dismiss her would be the ones walking out the door. Where are you listening from tonight? Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to know. And if you believe stories like this matter, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next one. Now, let's get into the story. The hotel lobby was a cathedral of marble and glass, with chandeliers that dripped light like champagne. At the center of it all, Eleanor Whitfield stood with her leather tote slung over one shoulder, waiting. 65 years old, tall, elegant, dark-skinned, she carried herself with the kind of presence that could silence a boardroom. But to the young desk clerk, she was just another woman who didn't belong. "Ma'am, guests for the executive floor check in over there," the clerk said, pointing toward a smaller line, his tone clipped, impatient. Eleanor placed her ID and reservation confirmation on the counter. "I'm here to check in. Room 1501. The clerk frowned as if she'd handed him a counterfeit bill. He tapped on his keyboard, then shook his head. "This room is reserved for our premium members. Are you sure you have the right hotel?" The words landed with the weight of dismissal. The two women standing behind Eleanor exchanged glances. One pulled out her phone, angling it just slightly as if capturing the scene might be worth posting later. "I'm certain," Eleanor said evenly. "Please look again." The clerk's voice rose a half step. "Ma'am, I don't see your name on the list of platinum members. We can arrange a standard room downstairs if you'd like." A manager in a sharp navy suit walked over. His badge read Stephen Garrison, Guest Services Lead. He didn't ask Eleanor a single question before making his judgment. "This area is for our executive guests only," he announced, loud enough for the lounge to hear. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside." Her expression didn't change, but the condescension in his tone hung in the air like a bad smell. From a sofa nearby, an older couple whispered. The man muttered, "Maybe she wandered in from the street." Eleanor straightened her back. "Mr. Garrison, I have a confirmed reservation. Room 1501. Kindly recheck your system." Garrison leaned closer, voice low but sharp. "Listen, ma'am, these suites are highly exclusive. I don't want to embarrass you further. Why don't you let me transfer you to something more appropriate?" Appropriate. The word stung, not for its meaning, but for what it revealed. A younger employee, carrying a tray of champagne flutes, hesitated nearby. Her eyes flickered between Eleanor's calm face and Garrison's dismissive posture. She bit her lip, as though she knew this was wrong, but said nothing. "I'll wait while you confirm," Eleanor replied. Her voice measured, her gaze unflinching. Phones were out now. A man in a business suit pretended to scroll email, but the red record dot on his screen betrayed him. Someone else whispered, "She's not leaving. This is about to get interesting." Garrison tapped the keyboard theatrically, then pushed the ID back toward her. "This system says you booked a standard queen in the annex. If you can't provide proof otherwise, I'll have security escort you out." The words rippled through the lobby. "Escort you out." Eleanor lifted her tote from the counter, set it gently on the floor, and retrieved her phone. She glanced at the screen. A text notification glowed. She slid the phone back without a word. One of the women recording whispered, "Did you see that? She's clearly someone important." But Garrison pressed on, his voice clipped and smug. "Security is on the way. Please step aside before you cause a scene." The irony was lost on him. The scene was already unfolding. Half the lobby was watching now, murmurs bouncing off marble walls. Eleanor's eyes dropped briefly to her wristwatch, a limited edition timepiece gleaming under the chandelier light. Not flashy, but anyone with sense knew it was worth more than a year of Garrison's salary. She lifted her gaze again, calm, steady, immovable. "I have not raised my voice," she said softly. "I have not broken any rule. I have simply asked that you verify my reservation." The clerk shuffled nervously. "Sir, maybe we should double-check." Garrison cut him off with a sharp gesture. "I know what I'm doing. She's wasting our time." The security guard arrived, a heavy-set man in his 40s with weary eyes. "What's the issue?" Garrison gestured toward Eleanor. "Guest attempting to access executive suites without authorization." The guard looked Eleanor up and down, then at the gathering crowd. His jaw tightened. Something in her composure unsettled him. She didn't look like a trespasser. She looked like a woman measuring every second, recording every word in her mind. Eleanor adjusted her tote strap, then spoke with the clarity of a gavel striking wood. "I will wait right here until this matter is resolved properly." The room went silent. Even the fountain in the corner seemed to hush. Behind her, a teenage boy whispered to his mother, "Why don't they just check again?" His mother shook her head, her phone still raised. "Because they already decided what they think she is." Garrison folded his arms, convinced he was in control. "Ma'am, I'm giving you one last chance to avoid being removed." Eleanor looked at him as if studying a case study in arrogance. Her expression didn't flicker. She merely tapped her phone once, sending a message unseen by anyone else. Somewhere above the lobby, in a conference room on the 16th floor, a meeting alert pinged across a board of directors' tablets. They would know soon enough that the woman being humiliated in the lobby was not an interloper. She was the one who signed their paychecks. But down here, all anyone saw was a black woman being told she didn't belong. And the clock over the reception desk ticked forward 12 minutes until everything changed. The lobby never stopped buzzing. Guests wheeled luggage across marble tiles. Staff in crisp uniforms hurried with trays of champagne and keycards. But the center of gravity had shifted. Everyone's eyes kept drifting back to the standoff at the front desk. Eleanor still stood calmly, her tote by her side, as if waiting for a train that was simply late. Stephen Garrison, the guest services lead, hovered nearby, his jaw tight with annoyance, pretending to scroll a tablet he no longer trusted. And around them, the murmurs grew. "Who is she?" A woman whispered from the velvet sofa. "She doesn't look like someone who just wandered in. She's got presence," her husband said, lowering his voice. "Like more presence than the manager." A bellhop brushed past, slowing just enough to catch a glimpse of Eleanor's watch. His eyes widened. He'd seen celebrities in this hotel before, but nothing like that timepiece. He leaned toward another bellhop. "That's a Patek. She's no ordinary guest." But Garrison either didn't hear or didn't care. He waved off the whispers. "Security will handle this," he muttered, his voice pitched just high enough to reassure himself. Eleanor took a slow breath. The fountain behind her splashed, steady as a metronome. Every movement she made was deliberate. The way she adjusted her sleeve, the way she shifted her tote, the way her eyes skimmed the room. Observing. Courting. One of the younger clerks at the desk risked a glance at her phone. A private message had just flashed from an internal staff group chat. "Anyone know who this lady is? She's too calm. Something feels off." Replies came quickly. "Manager's handling it. I swear I saw her on a business magazine cover." "Stop. No way." Still, the idea spread. Doubt moved faster than the fountain water. Nearby, a couple checking in for their anniversary whispered. "She said room 1501. That's the penthouse level." "Exactly. Why would she lie about that? Eleanor's phone vibrated again. She didn't check it immediately. Just let it rest in her hand, like a quiet drumbeat. When she finally glanced down, the message was clear. Conference call ready in 5 minutes. She slid it away without expression. The security guard shifted his weight, suddenly less certain. "Ma'am?" he said, softer this time. "Do you maybe have another form of confirmation?" She met his eyes. "I have everything I need," she replied. "What I'm waiting for is competence." It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. But the words cut sharper than any raised voice. A woman in line gasped. Someone whispered, "Did you hear that? She's not scared of him at all." Garrison bristled. "Ma'am, you're not going to insult my staff." Eleanor turned, surveying the lobby as if it were her own living room. The chandeliers, the marble, the polished brass railing. She touched the edge of the counter lightly with her fingertips, the way someone might touch a piano they'd played for years. "I'm not insulting your staff," she said quietly. "I'm describing the situation." Another ripple of whispers. The teenage boy from earlier leaned toward his mother. "She talks like a judge," he whispered. His mother didn't answer. She was too busy recording. Upstairs, an elevator chimed. Out stepped a mid-level manager, still adjusting his tie. He recognized Eleanor instantly. He froze, eyes wide, then ducked back into the elevator before anyone noticed. But a guest standing nearby caught the reaction. "He knows her," the guest whispered. "Why didn't he say anything?" The tension thickened. Even staff who tried to carry on with their duties found themselves sneaking glances at the woman who refused to move. Every detail, her posture, her calm voice, the certainty in her eyes carried the weight of someone used to giving orders, not receiving them. The fountain splashed. Phones buzzed. Someone whispered, "Maybe she's a government inspector." Another voice answered, "No." Bigger. "Look at the way she waits. Like everyone else should be adjusting their clocks to hers." Eleanor's phone vibrated once more. She lifted it just enough to read the screen. This time, a private message from an assistant. "Directors assembled. They're asking if you want us to start without you." She tapped a single word back. "No." The action was small, unseen by most. But one of the clerks caught it. His eyes flickered with sudden realization. He whispered to his colleague, "If she has directors waiting, who the hell is she?" The colleague swallowed. "Whoever she is, Stephen's about to regret this." At the desk, Garrison cleared his throat, desperate to reassert authority. "Last chance, ma'am. Either accept the standard room or leave. I won't ask again." But the words landed hollow. Around him, the staff no longer looked certain. Guests leaned in closer, sensing the air shift. Whispers carried like wind through tall grass. And Eleanor, still calm, still rooted like oak in marble, let the silence speak for her. The only sound was the fountain, steady, waiting. The lobby clock ticked toward the top of the hour. Eleanor stood motionless, the calm center of a storm she had never asked for, while Stephen Garrison tried to salvage his waning authority. Guests whispered, staff hesitated, and the fountain kept up its steady percussion. Then her phone rang. Not a quiet buzz like before, but a crisp chime that carried across marble. She lifted it slowly, pressed it to her ear, and spoke in a voice that silenced the room. "Yes, I'm on site." Every head turned. She wasn't pleading for help or asking for understanding. She was issuing status. On the other end, a voice boomed through faintly urgent, authoritative. Several guests leaned closer, straining to catch the fragments. "Directors are waiting. Media monitoring already. Your decision." Eleanor's gaze moved across the lobby, settling briefly on Garrison, then on the security guard who stood uncertain, then back to the crowd of curious onlookers. Her tone sharpened. "Tell them to hold. 13 minutes. I'll resolve it myself. Resolve it myself." The words rippled through the air like thunder. The guard shifted his weight. Garrison's face flushed, though whether from anger or fear was hard to tell. The younger clerk swallowed audibly. "Who the hell is she talking to?" a man muttered from the sofa. "She said directors," someone else whispered. "She's bluffing," Garrison snapped, desperate to regain control. Anyone can pretend on a phone call. But no one seemed convinced. Eleanor ended the call with a single motion, slipped the phone into her tote, and straightened. The marble floor reflected her silhouette, unbending, steady. She looked directly at Garrison. "You have 12 minutes left to correct your mistake." The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. The room had already adjusted its gravity around her. Garrison forced a laugh. "Excuse me? Are you threatening me?" "I don't threaten," Eleanor said. "I document, and then I act." The younger clerk stepped back, eyes wide. Guests exchanged looks. This was no longer the scene of a guest being denied a room. This was something larger, something shifting beneath the marble and glass. Upstairs, an elevator dinged again. Another manager appeared, then froze. At the sight of Eleanor, his lips parted as if to speak, then snapped shut. He ducked behind a column, pulling out his own phone in a hurry. Someone near the fountain whispered, "They know. Look at his face. They know who she is." The air grew heavier. Phones were recording openly now. A woman spoke into hers as though narrating, "Black woman denied access to executive suite, but she just took a call. Sounds like she's running the place." "This is wild," Garrison's voice cut in, sharp, brittle. "All of you, stop recording. This is a private matter." But it wasn't private anymore. It was a spectacle. Every second feeding the sense that the balance of power was about to flip. Eleanor checked her watch, then spoke into the quiet. 11 minutes. The fountain splashed. The chandeliers glittered. And for the first time, Garrison looked unsure of his footing. "Ma'am, if you don't comply, I'll have no choice but to..." Buzzed. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she put it on speaker. "Miss Whitfield," the voice said, unmistakably clear. "The board is assembled. The staff here seem unaware of your position. Do you want me to intervene?" Gasps. Head snapped toward her. "Ms. Whitfield. Board. Position." She answered with measured calm. "Not yet. I'll handle it in 10. The line went silent. She ended the call. A hush swept the lobby. Even the security guards stepped back. The teenage boy tugged his mother's sleeve. "Mom, did she just say board? Like, board of directors?" His mother nodded slowly, eyes fixed on Eleanor. "I think so." Whispers turned into certainty. She wasn't bluffing. Eleanor folded her hands gently on the counter. Her presence now filled every corner of the room, not because she demanded it, but because the truth was seeping through cracks of arrogance and doubt. "You should know," she said quietly to Garrison, "that when this is over, it will not be me escorted out." He swallowed, but forced another laugh. "You're making a scene no one believes." But he didn't finish, because at that exact moment, the house phone behind the desk rang, the one reserved for internal executive calls. The clerk picked it up, listened, then paled. His eyes darted to Eleanor, then to Garrison. It's corporate," the clerk stammered. "They're asking for Ms. Whitfield." The lobby erupted. Gasps, murmurs, someone muttering, "Oh my God." Guests lifted their phones higher, capturing every detail. Eleanor reached for the receiver with steady hands. She pressed it to her ear. "Yes, I'm here." The silence afterward was louder than any argument. Everyone knew. The woman they had tried to push aside didn't just belong here. She owned the very ground beneath their feet. and she had 9 minutes left. The house phone clicked back into its cradle. Eleanor's hand lingered a moment before she let it rest against the polished counter. No raised voice, no triumph, just certainty, like a verdict already written. The clerk swallowed. They asked for you by name. Of course they did, Eleanor said evenly. Stephen Garrison's face was flushed crimson. This doesn't prove anything. Anyone could. But Eleanor had already reached into her tote. She drew out a slim black folder and placed it on the marble. No flourish, no drama. Just a quiet gesture that seemed to pull every gaze in the lobby. Room 1501, she said calmly, under the Whitfield Group corporate block. The clerk leaned over the screen, typing fast. His eyes widened. She's right. There's an active block reservation. Executive authorization required. Garrison leaned over too, snatching at the tablet. But the clerk angled it away, suddenly more protective of the data than of his boss's ego. Sir, this is above us. Eleanor opened the folder with deliberate care. Inside lay documents embossed with seals and signatures. A page slipped forward, and the golden crest of the hotel's parent company caught the light. Guests pressed closer, craning to see. This building, Eleanor said, her voice still low, operates under systems you don't fully understand. And those systems answer to me. The guard shifted his stance. He wasn't sure whether to intervene or to salute. From the back of the line, a woman whispered, "She's not arguing. She's activating something." The clerk's terminal dinged. A message flashed across the screen. Urgent. Confirm presence of Ms. 1. Eleanor Whitfield. Board in session. Immediate verification required. The clerk's hands trembled. He looked up. "Ma'am, they're asking us to patch you through. Direct line to corporate headquarters." Garrison's voice cracked. "This is absurd. She's just pretending." But no one was listening anymore. The system itself had spoken. Eleanor placed one hand gently on the counter, steady as stone. "Patch it through." The clerk obeyed, connecting the call. A flat voice filled the speaker. "Ms. Whitfield, we're receiving multiple reports from the lobby. Are you safe?" "I'm safe," she replied. Her tone carried no heat, only authority. "But your staff is about to learn the consequences of assumption." The entire lobby stilled. The business travelers, the anniversary couple, even the teenage boy, all leaning in as though watching the first domino fall. Eleanor turned her eyes back to Garrison. "You wanted to question my membership, my status, my right to be here. What you fail to understand is that my presence isn't subject to your approval." The system chimed again. Another message flashed on the clerk's screen. He read it aloud, his voice thin. "All staff to remain in place. Interim directives forthcoming. Compliance mandatory." The words hung heavy. Interim directives. Compliance mandatory. Garrison tried to protest, but his words were swallowed by the sudden awareness settling over the room. This wasn't a customer service dispute. This was a chain of command snapping into place. Eleanor closed her folder. This hotel runs on systems: financial, operational, legal, and every one of them recognizes one thing. She paused, just long enough for the silence to ache. Ownership. The clerk looked pale. "Miss Whitfield, what would you like us to do?" She checked her watch. 7 minutes left, she murmured. Then louder, "You'll wait. The instructions are already coming, and when they do, you will follow them." The first email hit the staff inboxes at 6:07 p.m. sharp. Subject: Immediate compliance protocol. Effective now. Phones buzzed behind the front desk. The clerks leaned closer, their eyes scanning the terse sentences. One line stood out. "All operational authority in this property reverts to Ms. Eleanor Whitfield until further notice." The younger clerk looked up at Garrison. Pale. Sir, it's from headquarters. Across the lobby, murmurs spread like wildfire. Guests had caught the tension in the staff's faces. A woman whispered to her husband, "Something just changed. Look at them." Another message pinged. This time, the subject line glared across the tablet screen. Staff, audit session. Overseen by governance-led R.A. Devereaux. The clerk's hands shook as he read it. Audit. They're launching an audit right now. Garrison's jaw tightened. Don't read that aloud. But it was too late. The security guard had already heard. The champagne server had heard. The guests closest to the counter had heard. Whispers rolled outward like ripples in a pond. Eleanor remained still, her eyes steady, her presence like gravity itself. From the mezzanine balcony above, an assistant manager peered down. He pulled out his phone, then nearly dropped it when a notification glowed across the screen. Corporate governance alert. All department heads report for emergency session in conference room B. His gaze locked on Eleanor, realization dawning. Down in the lobby, the anniversary couple clutched each other's hands. She's not just some VIP, the woman whispered. She's the one giving the orders. The teenage boy muttered. She's the boss? Another ping. This one landed directly on Garrison's device. His face was drained of color. The words were clear enough for the clerk beside him to glimpse. Effective immediately. Stephen Garrison suspended. Pending review. A gasp tore through the air. He shoved the tablet down, but the silence that followed was heavier than any announcement. Everyone had seen his face. Everyone knew. Eleanor tilted her head slightly, her voice still measured. Systems don't wait for your permission, Mr. Garrison. They respond to truth. Phones kept vibrating. A bellhop screen lit up. Board of Directors, emergency call-in session. Streaming live for compliance review. His eyes darted to Eleanor, then to the cluster of guests recording everything. It's happening, he whispered. Right now. The lobby no longer felt like a hotel. It felt like a courtroom. Every breath, every glance, every whispered word was evidence. Garrison tried to speak, but the words faltered. His authority was evaporating. Line by line, message by message. And then came the sound. A notification bell that chimed across every staff device at once. Tablets, phones, terminals. The message was short, but devastating. Acknowledgement of owner on site. Execute deference protocols immediately. The younger clerk's voice trembled as he read it aloud. Owner. On site. Every head turned to Eleanor. For a moment, even the fountain seemed to hush, as though the building itself was listening. Guests stared, recording. Staff shifted, unsure whether to bow or simply step aside. Eleanor checked her watch. 5 minutes left, she said softly. Outside the lobby windows, the city lights glowed against the glass. Outside, the truth was no longer a whisper. It was motion unstoppable, undeniable, already reshaping the air around them. The lobby had changed. What was once marble and chatter now felt like a command center, every sound sharper, every glance heavier. Phones kept chiming with notifications no one could ignore. Another message lit up the clerk's screen. Compliance Phase 2 initiated. Await directive from Ms. Whitfield. The clerk swallowed hard. He looked at Eleanor, then at Garrison, whose face had gone chalk white. Guests whispered like jurors passing verdicts. Phase 2. What is this? She's running the show. Look at them. They're waiting on her now. The security guard straightened. For 20 years, he had worked lobbies like this, seen celebrities, senators, even royalty, but never had he seen staff look so powerless. He adjusted his tie, eyes locked on Eleanor. Garrison finally snapped. This is insane! You're just some woman with a folder and a watch. None of this is real. His voice cracked, desperate. You think a few emails make you the boss? Eleanor turned her gaze toward him, calm as ever. I don't think, Mr. Garrison. I know. Because the system already answered the question for you. As if on cue, the overhead speakers crackled to life. A voice, monotone but authoritative, filled the lobby. Attention all staff. Interim control measures are in effect. All deference to Miss Eleanor Whitfield until further notice. The chandeliers seemed to tremble with the echo. Guests gasped. Phones shot higher, recording every second. The teenage boy whispered, "It's like the building itself just bowed." The younger clerk could barely breathe. They just announced it, over the PA. Garrison staggered backward, as though the marble itself had betrayed him. No, this isn't. A final chime rang across the staff terminals. This message was longer, more precise. Emergency Board Directive. Suspension of General Manager Authority. Activation of Owner Authority Clause. All staff are to remain compliant. Immediate execution. The words left no room for denial. General Manager Authority suspended. Owner Authority activated. The anniversary couple clutched their hands tighter. This is it, the woman whispered. This is the moment. Eleanor lifted her phone one last time. The screen glowed with a simple message. Board connected. Ready when you are. She looked at the clerk, the guard, the servers, and the crowd. Her voice carried like steel wrapped in velvet. You asked who I am. You asked why I belonged here. In less than 2 minutes, you'll hear it from the board itself. Garrison shook his head violently. No board would. But his words were drowned out by the sound of the house phone ringing again, louder this time, insistent. The clerk answered, his hand trembling. He listened for 3 seconds, then looked at Eleanor with something like awe. They want you on speaker, he whispered. Every guest leaned forward. Every staff member froze. The fountain kept splashing, steady, oblivious, as though keeping time for a history lesson. Eleanor moved to the counter. She placed one hand on the receiver, but before she lifted it, she spoke. This lobby has witnessed arrogance, dismissal, and humiliation. In 60 seconds, it will witness something else. She raised the phone, and the room held its breath. The receiver felt cool in Eleanor's hand as she lifted it from its cradle. The entire lobby had gone silent. Marble, brass, and chandeliers bearing witness to a reckoning. Ms. Whitfield, the voice on the line said, crisp, professional. This is governance lead. Devereaux, the board is assembled. You may proceed. Eleanor did not glance at the crowd. She spoke evenly, her words measured. Thank you, Mr. Devereaux. Please place me on speaker. The clerk's hand trembled as he pressed the button. The voice boomed through the lobby, clear as glass. All staff are instructed to recognize Ms. Eleanor Whitfield as the controlling authority on site, effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the guests. The teenage boy clutched his mother's arm. Did you hear that? Controlling authority. But Eleanor wasn't finished. She laid her leather folder on the counter, opened it with deliberate calm, and drew out a document stamped with gold seals. She turned it so the nearest staff could see. This, she said, is the ownership clause. The words landed heavy. She tapped the paper once, her finger steady. 2 years ago, the Whitfield Group acquired a 41% stake in this hotel's parent company. By contract, any incident of gross misconduct toward guests triggers what is known as an ownership activation. Section 12, Subclause B. That clause places all operational control directly into my hands. The younger clerk's mouth fell open. He leaned closer to read the embossed signatures at the bottom. The names of board members, corporate attorneys, and finally, in looping script, Eleanor's own. 41%, she repeated. That is not influence. That is control. Garrison stumbled backward. No, this can't. This isn't. But Eleanor's voice cut through his protest. "Mr. Garrison, you are hereby suspended from duty, effective immediately." Her words were not shouted. They didn't need to be. They carried the weight of contract and capital. The security guard shifted his stance, suddenly no longer her adversary, but her enforcer. He stepped closer to Garrison. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside," the guests murmured. Stunned, a woman whispered to her husband. She just fired him, right here, in front of everyone. Eleanor turned another page in the folder. "For the record, our ownership group's investment last quarter alone totaled $92 million in this chain. Our returns have been steady, but culture has lagged. Tonight is evidence enough." She looked up, her gaze sweeping across the staff. This hotel does not belong to prejudice. It belongs to accountability, and accountability begins now. The clerk's tablet pinged again. A message glowed across the screen. "Confirmed. Suspension executed. Authority reassigned to owner Whitfield." He read it aloud, his voice cracking. "It's official." Eleanor closed the folder with calm precision. "I did not come here to argue over a room. I came here to remind this system of who commands it." From the speakerphone, Devereaux's voice cut in once more. "All present should understand. This directive is binding. Any refusal to comply will result in immediate termination. Phones recorded from every angle." Guests whispered about contracts, about millions, about power. The anniversary couple exchanged wide-eyed looks. "She owns it," the woman breathed. "She actually owns it." Eleanor adjusted her watch and fixed her eyes on Garrison one final time. "This building bears my family's investment. Its staff now answer to me, and from this moment forward," she paused, letting the silence deepen until every breath seemed to stop. "I am the one giving the orders." The fountain splashed, the chandeliers glittered, and the weight of truth crashed over the lobby like a wave. For the first time all night, Garrison had nothing to say. The silence after Eleanor's declaration felt almost holy. The crowd stood frozen, as though marble and glass had transformed into pews and altar. Then her phone buzzed once more. She lifted it with steady fingers, glanced at the screen, and nodded. "Begin transmission," she said. The clerk's terminal lit up instantly. An email unfurled across the screen, bearing the header, "Directive from owner Whitfield. Effective immediately." He read the first line aloud, voice trembling. "All suspended staff to vacate premises under escort. Interim leadership to be appointed within the hour." Gasps rippled outward. Garrison stumbled back, shaking his head, but the security guard moved in quietly, a shadow now acting on Eleanor's authority. Eleanor's voice carried across the lobby, calm, precise. "Escorting is not punishment. It is prevention. Staff will be treated with dignity, but accountability will be swift." Phones buzzed again. The champagne server lifted hers, eyes wide. "There's another email to all staff. Mandatory sensitivity training. 30 days. Another guest muttered, "She's changing policy. Right here. In real time." Eleanor continued, her tone like a conductor guiding an orchestra. "Effective tonight, all guest complaints will bypass local management and route directly to corporate compliance. Anonymous channels will remain open. No retaliation tolerated." The clerk nodded, typing furiously, each keystroke carrying the weight of reform. Then another notification appeared, this time across multiple devices. Audit triggered. Division-wide policy review commencing. The assistant manager on the mezzanine nearly dropped his phone. "It's system-wide," he whispered. "Not just this hotel. All properties are updating right now." The teenage boy tugged his mother's arm. It's like she pushed a button and the whole chain moved. His mother nodded, whispering back, "That's power." Eleanor turned another page in her folder, revealing financial charts and contracts. She didn't hold them up for show. She placed them on the counter, angled deliberately for staff to read. $92 million buys more than rooms and marble, she said. It buys responsibility. Tonight, that responsibility will not be wasted. Another directive pinged. Deferential guest protocol reinstated. All guests treated as premium until further notice. The clerk blinked. That means every guest is equal. Exactly, Eleanor said. Garrison sputtered from the corner, voice brittle. You can't run an empire with a snap of your fingers. Eleanor met his eyes, calm and final. Watch me. The guard placed a gentle but firm hand on Garrison's arm. He resisted for half a second, then sagged, realizing the system itself no longer answered to him. The crowd watched in silence as he was led toward the staff door. Another domino fell. From the speakerphone, Devereaux's voice returned, steady and cool. All directives logged. System reset confirmed. Owner authority remains active. Eleanor closed her folder at last, the sound like a gavel striking. She adjusted her watch and spoke one final line to the lobby, to staff, to guests recording every second. This is not revenge. This is repair. And with those words, the hotel itself seemed to exhale, a structure rebuilt, not with stone, but with order. Conference Room B was built for quarterly reviews and budget forecasts, not for crises. Yet tonight, every chair was filled. Executives dialed in on screens from Chicago, Los Angeles, London. Lawyers stacked folders like barricades. The clock on the wall ticked past 7, but the energy felt closer to midnight. Eleanor sat at the head of the mahogany table, posture unbending. The board members had seen her in this room before, but never like this. Never fresh from a confrontation that had the world's attention. Devereaux, the governance lead, cleared his throat. Miss Whitfield, the incident is trending. Nearly 250,000 views across live streams. Legal exposure is significant. We need directives. Eleanor placed her folder on the table. We don't need to talk about exposure. We need to talk about reform. She opened to the first page. A chart of discrimination complaints filed against the chain over the past year. The numbers were brutal. 127 documented complaints. 34 escalated to legal review. Average resolution time, 91 days. Industry average, 43. We are not behind by chance. We are behind by design. Murmurs spread. One executive in New York muttered, "This data wasn't in our quarterly report." "Of course not," Eleanor replied. "Because the system you designed buries complaints instead of resolving them." Night proved it. What began as humiliation in a lobby has become a public trial. And unlike a courtroom, the jury here is global. She slid another page across the table. Screenshots of social media feeds, hashtags climbing, shares multiplying. Stock tickers in the corner already flickered red. "Ladies and gentlemen, you don't have a PR issue," she said, her voice calm, cutting. "You have a systemic one, and systemic issues demand systemic reform." She raised a hand, counting off each demand like a surgeon listing instruments. First, an independent reporting channel, external from management, anonymous, third-party oversight, within 30 days. Second, mandatory training for all customer-facing staff. 8 hours minimum. Curriculum, approved by governance, not marketing. Third, executive accountability. 20% of bonuses tied directly to bias and complaint metrics. Fourth, immediate restitution for any guest documented as mistreated in the past 12 months. Quiet payouts will not suffice. Transparency is the only shield left. The room bristled. Lawyers scribbled. A vice president shook his head. Impossible timelines, union contracts, legal reviews. Eleanor leaned forward, her gaze steady. When a hurricane hits, you reroute entire chains in 6 hours. Don't tell me this company can't move faster when dignity is at stake. This is not about possibility. It's about will. This say, buy, 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 buy. Devereaux nodded slowly. Bored. The owner has invoked emergency authority. We are bound to comply. Silence followed, then reluctant agreement. Screens filled with nodding faces. Signatures cued digitally like falling dominoes. Eleanor closed her folder. This reform will not be remembered as punishment. It will be remembered as prevention. And prevention is how you protect an empire. The clock ticked again. The reforms had begun. By dawn, the ripple had already become a tide. In the hotel lobby, staff whispered about the events of the night, like they were recalling a storm. The young clerk replayed the moment Eleanor invoked the ownership clause again and again in his mind, stunned by how fast power could shift. He whispered to another clerk over coffee. She didn't yell. She didn't even raise her voice, and the whole system bent. Guests checking out spoke of nothing else. The anniversary couple carried their luggage past the fountain, still buzzing. "We just saw history," the woman said, half in awe, half in disbelief. A woman walked in, got humiliated, and left running the place. The teenage boy uploaded his shaky video footage. Within hours, it had 500,000 views. Comments flooded. "That's how you shut down arrogance." She owned them literally. Protect Eleanor Whitfield at all costs. By mid-morning, news anchors were replaying clips on national broadcasts. The footage showed Eleanor standing calm, the staff unraveling around her, the final declaration ringing like a gavel. Pundits called it the most cinematic corporate reckoning of the decade. And on Wall Street, investors watched closely. The parent company's stock dipped at first, nerves rattled by scandal. But then, as the reforms rolled out publicly, as Eleanor's speech circulated about dignity and accountability, sentiment shifted. Analysts wrote notes with headlines like, "Whitfield Group stabilizes chain with decisive governance." It stated aid, bursting of the rage, and remembered his appease. In boardrooms across the industry, executives studied the clip with dread. One CEO muttered to his team, "This is going to set a precedent. Guests everywhere will expect accountability like this." Inside the hotel itself, the changes took root immediately. Training schedules landed in staff inboxes. Anonymous reporting channels went live. Signs appeared in the lobby. All guests welcome. Zero tolerance for discrimination. The security guard who once stood ready to escort Eleanor out now escorted Garrison off the property. Rumors said his severance was already under review. The guard later told a colleague quietly, "She didn't just fire him. She rewrote the rules we work under." And Eleanor, she sat in the penthouse suite that had sparked it all. Curtains drawn back, city lights spilling across the carpet, she reviewed the first wave of compliance reports. Calm, deliberate, steady, as if last night had been less a battle and more a beginning. Her assistant stepped in, holding a tablet. "The press wants a statement. They're calling it the Whitfield Doctrine." Eleanor allowed herself the faintest smile. "Let them. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that they understand the message." Outside, the city was waking. Inside, the ripple of one confrontation had already become a reform movement too big to be ignored. And the world had only just begun to catch up. The suite was quiet, the kind of quiet only the top floor could buy. Morning light stretched across the carpet, touching the leather folder that had sparked a storm. Eleanor sat by the window, her hands folded loosely in her lap, watching the city come alive below. She had been in boardrooms, she had signed deals worth millions, but nothing compared to last night. This was not about contracts or profit. It was about being seen fully, unapologetically seen in a world too comfortable with overlooking women like her. Her assistant entered softly. "The calls keep coming. Networks, advocacy groups. They're asking if you'll speak at the summit next month." Eleanor turned from the window. Her voice was calm, but her eyes carried the steel of experience. "Tell them yes, but tell them this isn't about Eleanor Whitfield. It's about every guest who was ever told they didn't belong. The assistant nodded, leaving quietly. Eleanor rose, walking toward the folder on the desk. She opened it again, running her fingers over the embossed crest. Ownership, authority. Words that once belonged to others, now hers to wield. But she didn't feel the weight of victory. She felt the weight of responsibility. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with new energy. Staff moved differently. Shoulders lighter, eyes sharper, as if dignity had been written into the air. Guests noticed too. A woman checking in with her granddaughter smiled as the clerk addressed her warmly. No hesitation, no doubt. The ripple had become culture. Eleanor knew it wouldn't be easy. Change never was. There would be resistance, lawsuits, whispers that she had gone too far. But she also knew this. Once a truth is spoken publicly, it cannot be buried again. She closed the folder and looked out the window once more. Legacy, she murmured. It isn't what you leave behind. It's what you change while you're still here. Her phone buzzed with a final message from governance lead Devereaux. Reforms underway. Staff adjusting. Your leadership noted. Eleanor allowed herself a small smile, not of triumph, but of resolve. In years to come, people would tell the story of the night a woman walked into her own hotel, was told she didn't belong, and within minutes rewrote the rules of the entire empire. Some would call it scandal. Others would call it justice. But those who truly understood would call it what it was. Legacy in motion. Eleanor straightened her shoulders, the city humming beneath her. This wasn't the end of a battle. It was the start of a standard. And somewhere in lobbies across the world, people who had once been dismissed would walk taller, knowing the story of the woman who refused to be erased. Thank you for staying with me all the way through this story. I know it wasn't just a story about a hotel, or a CEO, or even about a boardroom. It was about something deeper, the fight to be recognized when the world wants to shrink you. For so many women, especially women of color, being told, "You don't belong here," is not a rare humiliation. It's a wound we've carried too many times. But what Eleanor showed us is that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it speaks with calm, with clarity, with unshakable dignity. And when it does, it cannot be denied. She turned shame into strength, and strength into change. That's not just her legacy. It's an invitation to all of us. If this story touched you, if it made you think about your own battles and your own victories, I hope you'll share it. Leave a comment. Let me know how it spoke to you. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Together, we can keep amplifying voices that the world needs to hear.